The call I'd been expecting came on a Monday at 7:31 a.m. Not to my phone. I'd blocked Trevor's number 3 days before. It came to Dale Murphy, standing in a bathroom stall, watching 3 federal inspectors ask for documentation that was sitting on my kitchen table 15 miles away. My name is Rex Coleman. I'm 48. For 22 years, I was the pipeline safety compliance manager at Lone Star Gas Transport, a mid-tier company that moves natural gas through 840 miles of high-pressure pipeline across Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. My job was simple: keep $2.8 million worth of federal contracts clean, compliant, and ready for inspection. Make sure the gas flows safely and the paperwork matches reality. I was good at it. The numbers don't lie about that. I cleared my desk 10 days ago. The PHMSA inspection was scheduled for this Monday. Nobody thought to ask me what that meant before they walked me out. Let me back up. Lone Star had been family-owned since 1994. The Hendricks family ran it like you'd expect from people who understood that moving pressurized gas through populated areas isn't a place for shortcuts. Conservative. Careful. They knew that one mistake could put their name on the front page of every newspaper in Texas, and not in a good way. I started there in 2002. Fresh off a field engineer job in West Texas that paid decent but had no future after what I saw happen to a crew near Midland in 1998. I was 22 then, green as grass, working a routine maintenance job when the call came in. Pipeline emergency, 15 miles north. By the time we got there, you could see the fire column from 10 miles out. A 30-inch transmission line had let go at full pressure, 1,200 pounds per square inch of natural gas turning into a fireball that could be seen from space. The blast crater was 40 feet across and 20 feet deep. 3 men died. 2 of them had families. The investigation took 8 months. I read every page of the final report, twice. 47 separate compliance violations that had been building up for months. Paperwork that didn't match the field conditions. Safety checks that existed on paper but never happened in reality. A pressure monitoring system that had been sending warning signals for 3 weeks that nobody understood because the safety manager had been laid off 6 months earlier to cut costs. That's when I learned the difference between having a safety program and being safe. I built Lone Star's compliance operation from nothing. Started with a desk, a file cabinet, and a mandate to make sure what happened in Midland never happened to us. The documentation system came first. Every valve, every pressure test, every maintenance record organized by date and cross-referenced by pipeline segment. Then the emergency response protocols, phone trees that worked at 3 a.m. on Christmas morning if they had to, contact chains that included backup numbers and backups for the backups. I wrote the safety handbook that every new hire spent their first week reading, not because management required it, but because I made it clear that nobody set foot on a pipeline site until they understood what they were looking at and why it mattered. The handbook started at 40 pages. By the time I was done, it was 180 pages with photographs, diagrams, and case studies from every major pipeline incident in the last 20 years. I sat through 8 PHMSA inspections over 22 years, passed every single one clean, not just passed, commended. The kind of inspection reports that other companies asked to see because they wanted to know how we did it. The secret wasn't complicated. I treated every inspection like it was happening tomorrow, every day, for 22 years. Documentation stayed current. Training stayed fresh. Equipment got maintained on schedule, not when it broke down. When inspectors showed up with their clipboards and their checklists, they found a system that worked the way it was supposed to work. The Hendricks family sold out 14 months ago to a private equity group out of Dallas. The kind of outfit that specialized in buying family businesses, cutting costs, and flipping them to larger companies within 3 years. They installed Trevor Kane as CEO. Trevor was 38. He'd spent his career in fintech, payment processing systems and mobile banking apps, companies with foosball tables and catered lunch and mission statements about disrupting traditional industries. He wore expensive sneakers to meetings and used words like synergy and optimization without irony. He had never seen a pipeline. He had never worked with pressurized systems. He didn't know what MAOP stood for or why it mattered. I know this because in our first meeting, he asked me to explain why we couldn't just monitor everything remotely with sensors and apps. I explained it to him. The regulations, the physical inspections, the documentation requirements that date back to when pipeline explosions were front-page news, and Congress decided some things were too important to leave to innovation. I showed him photos from Midland, explained how wireless monitoring systems fail when the thing they're monitoring explodes. Walked him through why federal inspectors still want to see paper copies of critical documents. Trevor nodded like he understood. Then he asked the same question 3 more times over the next 2 months, each time framed as a cost-saving initiative or operational efficiency improvement. That's when Owen Miller showed up, Trevor's consultant. 26 years old with a background in SaaS marketing, he walked in wearing designer jeans and a hoodie, spent the first 20 minutes of our introduction explaining how we could gamify our safety reporting process, make it more engaging for field crews, more intuitive. He had a certification in industrial safety management from an online program, 6 weeks of video modules. He was very excited about it. Trevor introduced him as a consultant who would help modernize our safety infrastructure. I showed Owen the red, emergency binder, 4 inches thick, organized by sections, updated quarterly for 22 years. Pressure test records going back to system startup. Emergency contact chains with home phone numbers for every key person in the pipeline network. Incident reports cross-referenced by date, location, and cause. Pipeline route maps with every valve, every pressure relief point, every cathodic protection station marked and verified. The binder represented 22 years of institutional knowledge, every lesson learned from every close call, every procedure refined through trial and error, every contact number verified and re-verified, because when something goes wrong at 2 a.m., you don't get a second chance to dial the right number. Owen looked at it like I'd handed him a rotary phone. "Why isn't this in the cloud?" he asked. "Because PHMSA inspectors show up with clipboards and checklists," I said. "They want to see paper. They want to flip through documentation and verify that what's written matches what's in the field. They want to see signatures with dates. They want to confirm that when you say you tested a valve on March 15th, there's a physical record signed by the person who actually turned the wrench. That's how federal pipeline safety works. That's how it's always worked." Owen looked at Trevor. Trevor did that thing he always did when he thought I was being resistant to change. That patient smile that said he understood I was stuck in the past, but he was going to help me see the future. "We're not changing the regulations," Trevor said. "We're just making compliance more efficient. I want to be clear about something. I wasn't against efficiency. I was against breaking things that worked to make them look more modern." Over the next 6 months, I watched Owen try to fix problems that didn't exist. He started small. Replaced our paper visitor log with a tablet system that needed Wi-Fi to record entries. "The front gate doesn't have internet access because it's 400 yards from..." We could install a Wi-Fi extender. Cost? We could install a Wi-Fi extender. Cost? $3,000 for equipment and installation, to replace a clipboard and pen that worked perfectly fine. Then he went after our field inspection logs. Paper forms that crews filled out when they walked the pipeline routes. Simple checkboxes for valve positions, pressure readings, visual inspections for leaks or damage. The forms fit in a shirt pocket. Crews could fill them out with a pen in the rain, in the mud, in 100-degree heat. Owen replaced them with a mobile app. The app was sleek, I'll give him that. Drop-down menus and digital signatures and automatic GPS tagging. It also required cellular coverage to sync data back to the main database. Half our pipeline routes run through areas where cell towers are 20 miles apart. Dead zones where the only communication is the 2-way radio in the truck. Crews would spend an entire day doing inspections, come back to the office, and discover the app hadn't saved any of their work because they'd lost signal somewhere along the route. When I explained this to Owen, he said we could upgrade to satellite connectivity, cost $15,000 for equipment and $500 per month for service, to replace forms that cost 12 cents each to print. The breaking point came when Owen discovered our pressure monitoring system used dedicated landlines for alarm transmission, hardwired copper phone lines that connected every monitoring station directly to our control room. The system was 15 years old, reliable. It worked when cellular networks went down, when internet service failed, when storms knocked out power to cell towers. Owen wanted to replace the entire system with wireless transmitters. More flexible, he said. Easier to maintain. We could monitor everything through a web dashboard, real-time data visualization, predictive analytics. I showed him the 1998 incident report from West Texas, the one I kept in my desk drawer. The pipeline that exploded had a state-of-the-art wireless monitoring system. When the initial rupture happened, the blast damaged the transmission equipment. The monitoring station went dark. By the time anyone realized there was a problem, gas had been leaking for 40 minutes. That's what turned a manageable incident into a catastrophe. Owen said that was legacy thinking. Modern wireless systems were more robust. The failure scenarios I was worried about were edge cases, statistical anomalies. We couldn't design our entire safety infrastructure around 1 in a million events. I told him that edge cases kill people in the pipeline business, that the whole point of safety systems is to handle the scenarios you don't expect, that when you're moving explosive gas through populated areas, you don't optimize for convenience, you optimize for reliability. He went to Trevor about it. I could see where this was heading. I'd watched it happen at 3 other companies during my career. New management comes in, decides the people who built the system are obstacles to progress, starts replacing experience with enthusiasm. It usually ends with someone getting fired. The only question is whether it happens before or after something goes wrong. The signs were subtle at first. Meetings about streamlining operations where I wasn't invited. Conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. Owen started referring to our documentation system as analog processes in his reports to Trevor. He used phrases like digital transformation and operational modernization to describe changes that were actually just making things more complicated. Then the budget meetings started. Owen had prepared a presentation about cost savings from digitizing our compliance infrastructure. He had charts showing how much we spent on paper, printing, filing cabinets, physical storage space. He projected savings of $45,000 per year if we moved everything to cloud-based systems. What he didn't include in his analysis was the cost of failing a PHMSA inspection, operations shut down pending remediation, regulatory fines, contract suspensions, legal liability. I'd seen companies lose millions because they tried to save a few thousand on documentation systems. I tried explaining this to Trevor, showed him the regulatory requirements, walked through the inspection checklist line by line, explained why inspectors wanted to see physical documents, not tablet screens. Trevor listened politely. Then he asked Owen to prepare a timeline for the digital transition. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday at 4 p.m. Trevor's assistant sent the calendar invite at 3:45, subject line, quick sync, no agenda. In 22 years, I had never been called to a quick sync at 4 p.m. on a Thursday. I walked down the hall. Dale Murphy, my shift supervisor, was coming out of the break room with coffee. He saw my face. He'd worked with me for 11 years, he knew. Trevor's office was the only room in the building with a view of the pipeline right of way. He was sitting behind his desk, shuffling papers that looked blank from where I sat. Owen was in the corner chair, scrolling his phone, feet up on the coffee table like he was in his living room. "Rex," Trevor said, "have a seat." I sat down, kept my hands flat on my knees. "We've been evaluating the safety management position," Trevor started. He had a particular expression when he delivered bad news. Eyebrows pulled together slightly, mouth set like he was sharing something difficult but necessary. "The industry is changing. Everything is digital now, data-driven. We need someone who thinks in that framework naturally. We move natural gas through steel pipes," I said. "Someone still has to walk the line and check the valves." "That's exactly what we're talking about," Owen said without looking up from his phone. "Legacy processes. Everything can be monitored and remotely now. Real-time data streams, predictive analytics. We're building systems that can identify problems before they become problems." I looked at him. He was 26 years old. He had never held a pipeline safety certification. He had never been woken up at 3 a.m. because a pressure alarm went off. He had never stood in a field trying to locate a gas leak with a handheld detector while coordinating with emergency responders over a two-way radio. He had never seen what happens when systems fail. I didn't say any of that. When you start defending your record to people who haven't bothered to understand it, you've already lost. Trevor told me they were releasing me to pursue other opportunities. Effective immediately. 2 weeks severance. I calculated it without meaning to. 22 years. I had driven back from vacation once because a pig run malfunctioned and the backup operator didn't know the bypass procedure. I had worked through Christmas Eve when a pressure regulator failed and we needed to maintain flow while coordinating repairs. I had filed incident reports at midnight on New Year's Eve because the paperwork deadlines were non-negotiable and federal inspectors don't care about holidays. None of that factored into the severance calculation. "All right," I said. Trevor blinked. He'd been expecting an argument. Maybe threats about lawsuits or claims about wrongful termination. He wanted drama. That would make it easier to justify the decision later. It would give them a story to tell about how I was difficult, resistant to change, stuck in the past. I wasn't going to give him that. "Who's the acting safety manager?" I asked. "Owen is transitioning into the role," Trevor said, sitting up a little straighter like he was proud of himself. I looked at Owen. He had put his phone down and was watching me with the expression of someone who isn't sure if he should feel guilty or proud. "Does Owen have his pipeline safety certification?" I asked. "Has he completed his hazmat training? Is he qualified to authorize emergency shutdowns?" "We're fast-tracking the paperwork," Trevor said. "There's no fast track for federal safety certifications," I said. "It's a process that takes months. Owen cannot legally serve as safety manager without it." Trevor waved his hand. "Red tape. Owen has the technical background. He understands the systems." I sat there for another beat, long enough to make sure I understood exactly what I wasn't going to say. I understood. "All right," I said again. I went back to my office and started putting things in a box. Coffee mug, a photo from a hunting trip 5 years ago, a stress ball from the 2019 audit that had lost most of its shape. The red emergency binder was sitting in its usual spot on the corner of my desk. Black 3-ring, 4 inches thick, with a label I'd printed and laminated in 2002. It contained everything. The current Form 7100.1 Incident Reporting Protocols. The emergency contact chain with home phone numbers for every key person in the pipeline system. The PHMSA audit checklist I'd updated 3 months ago specifically for Monday's inspection. Every pressure test record, every maintenance log, every inspection report for 22 years. Pipeline route maps with GPS coordinates for every valve, every pressure relief point, every cathodic protection station. The complete regulatory history of 840 miles of pipeline infrastructure. I want to be honest about what went through my mind when I looked at that binder. Part of me thought about leaving it there, walking out and letting whatever happened happen. But I knew what would happen. Owen would find it eventually, not understand half the content, and by Monday morning it would be disorganized even before the inspectors arrived. Another part of me thought about calling Trevor's assistant, explaining that there was a PHMSA inspection on Monday, and here's what you need to pass it. 15-second conversation, done. But I knew how that would play out. Trevor would spend the weekend panicking, put together something incomplete, probably still fail the inspection, and then tell the PHMSA investigators that the previous safety manager had left the program in disarray. I'd seen that move before. The blame flows downhill, and they always aim it at whoever just walked out the door. I thought about my severance agreement. Section 4, Paragraph B. Employee agrees to return all company property upon termination. The binder wasn't on the company asset inventory. I knew because I'd checked. It was a working document, not equipment. It was mine to return if requested. Nobody requested. I put it in the box, picked up the box, dropped my ID badge on the front desk, and walked out into a Thursday afternoon that felt slightly unreal. The binder sat on my kitchen table for 10 days. Friday, I reorganized my tackle box, something I hadn't done in 3 years. Every lure sorted by type and size, every weight organized by function. It took most of the afternoon, and I didn't think about work once. That told me something about my mental state that I wasn't ready to examine too closely. Saturday, I drove out to the rifle range and put 50 rounds through my .308. Came back, grilled burgers, watched a college game that didn't matter to me. Dale texted around 6 p.m. Owen replaced the main gate logbook with a tablet system that needs Wi-Fi to record entries. Guard Shack doesn't have internet. Visitors can't sign in. Owen walked past it twice and said it just needed time to sync up. I read the message and set my phone face down on the counter. I wasn't being cold. Replying would have been interference. I was a civilian now. Sunday evening brought the message that changed everything. Another text from Dale, this one longer. Owen wrote the master valve override codes on the whiteboard in conference room B, left them up there after the meeting. Anyone walking past can see them. Maintenance crew, cleaning staff, visitors asked him about it. He said they're just temporary until he gets the digital system set up. I read it twice. poured 3 fingers of bourbon, sat with it. I need to explain something about master valve override codes for people who haven't worked with pipeline systems. Those codes control every automated valve, every pressure relief system, every emergency shutdown point in 840 miles of pipeline infrastructure. If someone walks past that conference room and takes a photo with their phone, they have remote access to systems that serve 3 states. That's not a compliance violation. That's a potential terrorist target. The codes weren't just numbers on a whiteboard. They were keys to infrastructure that, if compromised, could shut down natural gas service to 500,000 homes. Or worse, if someone knew what they were doing, they could override safety systems and create pressure conditions that would make Midland look like a minor incident. I thought about making a phone call, not to Trevor. I'd blocked his number Friday morning after he texted asking for the password to the pressure monitoring system. The password that was probably written on the same whiteboard by now. I could have called our PHMSA district coordinator, Sandra Webb, based out of Houston, left an anonymous tip about a security breach at a pipeline facility. She would have been required to investigate immediately, but I knew how that would resolve. PHMSA would call the facility. Trevor would answer. Trevor would say the former safety manager was disgruntled and making false accusations to sabotage the company. There would be paperwork, investigations, counterclaims. By the time it got sorted out, Monday's inspection would be over, and I'd be the one who looked like he had an axe to grind. I finished the bourbon and went to bed. Monday morning, I woke up at 5:30 without an alarm. 22 years of early shifts don't disappear overnight. I made coffee, the good stuff that takes 10 minutes to brew properly, loaded my fishing gear, and drove out to Lake Conroe. At 7:30 sharp, the PHMSA inspection team arrived at Lone Star Gas Transport. I know the exact time because Dale was already texting from a bathroom stall. 3 of them, 2 men, 1 woman. Lead inspector looks like she means business. The lead inspector was Diana Webb. I'd worked with her during our 2019 and 2022 audits. She doesn't waste time or accept partial credit. She moves through her inspection checklist like she's following a blueprint for dismantling incompetence. Guard trying to get them to sign in on the tablet, still buffering. Diana asked for paper backup log. Guard said they went paperless. She's writing something down. I cast my line and settled back in my seat. Watched a great blue heron work the shallow water near the opposite bank. Patient, methodical, no wasted motion. Diana asked for the facility safety manager. Guard went to get Owen. Here's where I have to be honest. Part of me felt something in that moment. Not satisfaction exactly, more like the feeling you get when you've been watching something unstable for a long time and you finally hear the support beam crack. Owen came out wearing his hoodie, no safety badge, carrying coffee. Introduced himself as head of safety and digital compliance. Diana would have looked at him the way she looked at every checklist item that wasn't going to pass. Professional, neutral, taking notes. Diana asked for his certification documentation. Owen said he was in process of getting certified. That's when it was over. Diana asked for the Form 7100.1. The 7100.1 is the current incident reporting protocol, one of the foundational documents in any pipeline safety program. It's not obscure. It's not a technicality. If you're the safety manager and someone asks for the 7100.1 and you don't know what that is, you're not qualified to hold the position. Owen asked her to spell it. Dale's next text was 4 words. It's over, Rex. I watched the heron strike. Quick, precise, successful. It lifted off with something silver flashing in its beak. The updates continued through the morning. Diana requesting documentation that didn't exist. Owen trying to explain digital systems to an inspector who wanted to see paper. Trevor arriving and using words like ecosystem and innovative solutions while Diana took notes with the expression of someone documenting a slow-motion disaster. By 11 a.m., Dale's updates had slowed to a trickle. That's how I knew the active phase was done. When things are still fluid, Dale sends quick bursts every few minutes. When it goes quiet, it means the inspectors have taken control and everyone inside is just sitting there waiting for the verdict. The final summary came at 11:47. Diana declared operation suspended pending remediation. Facility failed to produce a qualified safety manager, current incident reporting documentation, or valid emergency contact protocols. Trevor tried to argue. She handed him a form acknowledging the findings. He signed it. $2.8 million in contracts on hold until safety compliance is restored and a corrective action plan is approved by PHMSA. Owen is in the parking lot asking someone if this is going to affect his consulting rate. I finished my sandwich and cast my line again. The call from Beverly Stone came at 2:20 p.m. She was VP of Regulatory Affairs at Pinnacle Energy, the parent company that had owned Lone Star before the private equity sale. Professional voice, direct sentences. She'd been briefed on the inspection results. The situation needed immediate resolution. She needed someone with pipeline safety experience to rebuild the compliance program and manage the recertification process. I told her I was exploring other opportunities. She offered reinstatement at my previous role plus 18%. I told her that going back to the same site wasn't something I was interested in. Long pause. Beverly was smart enough to know I wasn't bluffing and experienced enough not to try calling it. I understand the regional safety director position has been open for 8 months, I said. That position isn't officially posted, she said. I understand. She called back 47 minutes later. The position was posted as of that afternoon. Regional Safety Director, oversight of 4 states, multiple pipeline systems, salary band considerably above my previous position, remote work 3 days per week. Could I start Wednesday? I said I could. Trevor was terminated for cause 6 weeks later. Gross negligence in personnel management, violation of federal safety regulations, failure to maintain operational compliance. Owen left the building the same day the inspection concluded, escorted to his car by security. Dale texted me that evening. New safety manager started today. First thing she asked for was the paper documentation system. Second thing she asked was where you went. I gave him my email to pass along. She wrote the next week. Professional note, 3 sentences. Said the previous documentation system was the most organized she'd ever inherited. Said it made the recertification process significantly easier. Said thank you. My new office in Houston has windows that look out at actual pipeline infrastructure. I can see 3 valve stations from my desk. I drink good coffee every morning because I have time to make it right. You can rename a job title. You can upgrade a software platform. You can digitize every form in the building. But when the inspector asks for documentation and you don't have it, none of that matters. The gas either flows safely or it doesn't. The paperwork either exists or it doesn't. I built 22 years of systems that answered both questions correctly, every time. They walked me out the door and thought they were keeping the work. They were only keeping the desk. Experience isn't just knowing what to do when things go right. It's knowing exactly what will go wrong when someone who doesn't understand the system tries to improve it. They thought they were buying efficiency. What they actually bought was the expensive lesson that some knowledge can't be digitized, some expertise can't be outsourced, and some mistakes cost more than 22 years of salary combined.